Thanks for watching my latest video on Mig-29 version 3 build. I like to call my shop the Roll Tide Mig shop. Big football fans down here. This plane I called the Mig-29v3M3 for the Moran modified MiG, and actually E3 Scott came up naming this plane, and he helped me design many of the modifications as well as do some test flight for this airplane. So here it is. I went with the geometric Russian camouflage scheme. Didn't turn out exactly like I wanted, but I think it still turned out looking pretty nice. On the undersurface under the right wing, based on Dave Powers' recommendation, put right is red and on the bottom, so it's easy to maintain orientation of the airplane during a lot of maneuvers. And then I just fashioned a little lightning bolt, which is a PDF file, cut it out of paper, glue stick it on there, paint, then take it off. And I like to put a little bit of black on the nacelles as well to help orient the airplane in flight. So with the original test plane, the knife edge experimental, my big goal with that plane was vertical rudders to enable knife edge flight and scale type stall maneuvers. So you can see with the pictures over the bottom, that's the succession of the 3 different times I cut the rudders, trying different things to make sure that I could get the authority that I needed, and I did. So my goal was a more scale appearance. Here you can see the overlay of in red is the original plan, vertical stabilizer, and then the full-size MiG. So I translated this to design plans, how to easily mark this out and cut this rudder, vertical rudder and vertical stabilizer more down to scale. So here's what it looks like in the forefront, the blue plane, and the plane in the back is an original vertical stabilizer and rudder without any modifications. Here they are back to back. You can see the large angled rudders on the original design. And when you use those rudders, it creates a roll as well because of the angle, and that's what I wanted to eliminate with the vertical rudder. I also felt there was too much aileron authority. If you look at the picture at the bottom, you can see where I took the original ailerons, cut them in half by the width, and then I cut them again in half of the length. It really ended up with inboard flaperons that function as ailerons, flaps, and spoilerons. And I did get a lot less tip stalling by having these small inboard ailerons. And also notice when I do a lot of high alpha flight, I turn the ailerons off completely if I'm not using spoilerons. Same thing in very high speed dives where I'm going for max speed. So here's a simple design, how you can mark up the planes if you want to try inboard ailerons. Of course, the control horn you have to replace. It doesn't go as shown on the original diagram. But I moved them outboard by 3/4 of an inch to give me a little bit of that wing plate to glue to the side plate, and also to clear the outboard elevon servo and control rod. I did a lot of experimentation with KF airfoils, and you can watch that video. In this plane, I went to 50% chord length, and then I taped the trailing edge, or the rear step of the KF, essentially creating the SAS wing, what I call the simple aerodynamic streamlined shape wing. I like a symmetric wing. I like the flight characteristics of it, and I don't do a lot of super slow speed flying around. I do high alpha, but I primarily like to do mid-range speed and a lot of stall type scale acrobatic maneuvers that I'm working on. So I designed this wing to give me more of the scale type flying. Also downsized the elevons. A lot of tail wash. E3 Scott and I have described this and talked about this, where you turn the plane up on its side in a high wind, and that wind hits those big elevons, and because they're so far from the center of gravity, you get this, what I call a polar pitch effect. So I kept shaving down the ailerons to feel where I had adequate authority and also a scale appearance. Here's the original MiG plans with the overlay of my new elevon shape. I simply print this out and make my new elevons. Other thing I tested on the knife edge experimental was the lurks, the leading edge root extensions. These were designed to improve low speed and high alpha flight. They also soften pitch inputs at high speed. They make the airplane a lot less darty. Kind of gives the airplane a cushion of air over the top of the fuselage and down the wing root. And so when I cut these, I cut the leading edge from the bottom of the wing plate to the top of the lurks rather than making it a symmetric cut. So there's a picture of the vortices that are generated by lurks. Built this plane for speed. All edges are tapered, all score and fold gaps were filled, and I wanted outboard servos. I did not want any servos, control horns, or control rods down the tail plate in the thrust vectoring zone from the prop wash. So here are my outboard outboard servos, and I always start from the back when I install my servos. So you can see the Elevon servos go in first. They go in over the carbon rod for maximum stiffness of the wing plate. Then the next one forward is the rudder, which comes out the top. Then in front of that, the aileron. So they're all three stacked neatly in a row. I use foam tack primarily for all of the build. I do use epoxy when I'm doing the fuselage stays down the center. And then I use epoxy on my carbon spars. I don't use foam tack because it's expensive. And then for all of my glassing, I use this Aleene's Tacky Gel clear glue. It's very cheap and it works fine. This is what I call the composite build. I use model plane foam on the external fuselage and canopy. It's easy to bend, easy to mold, easy to sand, and Depron used everywhere else, including the internal fuselage components. This is a look at the fuselage before I close the top plate. I put these little pieces on the side there to give the top plate more support because there's no tape on the inside there. I glue the side pieces first with a little hot glue, tack them together like doing spot welding. It's quick and it's fast. I found if I put the hot glue on there, wait about 3 seconds, I can then squeeze it together. The glue comes out and it doesn't burn my fingers. Now here I want you to notice the alignment. The top plate, it lines up nicely with the bottom plate's a little bit off. All 4 of my MiGs have had a slight twist to the fuselage, and not until after this build did I finally figure it out. So here I've glued the side plates together, then I glued the top plate on top of the side plates, and here you can still see the bottom plate's got a slight twist to it. And I have not figured this out yet, whether this is a function of the plans or my cutting or how I build these things, but it was square prior to gluing the bottom plate. And now you can see that little bit of a twist as it's sitting on my workshop table. And then I do little tack welds again with hot glue just to put the fuselage where I want it before I fill with foam tack and cut strips to fill all those gaps. Here's how I cut out my KF foils. I wanted to go to 50% to build the SAS wing. So I did all the measurements. I mark it out, and just to make it easy, I put 1 inch on the middle part and then 2 inches out at the end of the wing. And then I set this down on top of my dollar store foam and mark out the dollar store foam. So I have the KF and the lurks as one piece, and then I'll do the bottom piece as well. It's much easier than gluing paper on and cutting the paper. I had some carbon square tube left over, and I used that on each side of the motor mount to reinforce. Of course, it's epoxied in. Servo setup, I think it's real important if you read about servo resolution and lever arms, mechanics, force, rotation, all that. You ideally want your servo moving as much as possible with the least amount of with the greatest amount of movement on your surface control as well. So the more you can move your control rod closer to the center on your control horn, the better mechanical force you get and the better resolution you get. And you want to keep your travel anywhere from 80 to 100% and your dual rate from 100%. So ideally, if you've got 100% travel and 100% dual rate, you've nailed it. And you'll get a much better feel and you don't have to use as much expo. And then the throw there is in inches, so I got a 1/2 inch aileron throw, 4.5 Elevon plus aileron, and on down. And then I keep track of all my mixes because these are just, I still have a hard time with my DX8 radio completely figuring out how to do these mixes, but it's trial by error. So the first mix 1 and 2 are to make the elevons function as elevons, not elevators. Mix 3 and 4 is for my rudder brakes, and then mix 5 is I like to have a switch to turn my ailerons off, so I'm only using elevons. And I find this really helps in high alpha flight, as well as when I do a high speed dive going for max speed. I don't need that aileron input. All right, so here we'll do a quick video tour, and thanks for watching.